their YouTubes and their avocado toast.
Okay, Boomer.
You kids don't know how good you have it.
Okay, Boomer. Hey, Dad, what's the Wi-Fi password? I need to know the Wi-Fi password.
Okay, Zoomer.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of OK Boomer, OK Zoomer. I am your host, Ghantt Chart, and with me is my co-host, Daddysquatch. Now, I know we've been gone for quite a little bit, and a lot of people are probably wondering, where we have been. We were traveling to Colorado, and then Daddysquatch got the ick, so that added some more time, and then I had to do another trip to South Dakota, and yeah, this is basically, when everything all kind of aligned together, That's the fun thing about being, an adult, is that you have to make sure everything aligns together, kind of like a planetary alignment. Yes. So today, our episode is about the greatest gift that God has given to man, the sweet nectar of the gods, the heavenly drink that all men and rednecks alike all love, and that is beer. So, we have done, something that Daddysquatch and I like to do is that we like to go out and get some beers, like to get some drinks, because no two beers are ever the same, so we like to go out there and we like to try out different recipes. So this episode is going to be like talking about different beers that we've sampled, different beers that we like, as well as, compare and contrast kind of thing. So I figured we'd start with the big brands. So Daddysquatch, what is your quote-unquote favorite big brand of beer?
Oh, I don't know. When I was growing up, it was interesting because it didn't have all the microbreweries they had today. So when I was a kid, not a kid. When I was a legal adult, I was drinking. Usually,
Daddysquatch, you could tell us if you were drinking, while you were a teenager. It's okay. I'm sure, if you ask a boomer, that they would say, yeah, I had a few beers.
Well, remember, in Wisconsin, drinking age was 18 at that time. So
yeah.
We drink Old Style, we drink Miller, we drink Schlitz. Those were the big brands back then. So if you take a look, pretty much most beers that you had in that day were just lagers. So it was just depending on which lager you like. But there wasn't much difference in the beer. What they went for was, hey, we wanted to make it light in color. We want to make it so it has not too different of a taste. And then you get your brand, and this brand is better than that brand, when at the end of the day, they all tasted pretty much the same.
There was one brand that you keep talking about that I think, I'm curious if you've ever drinking it, which was Rainier beer.
Oh, yes, I had Rainier beer, Olympia beer. And the thing about Rainier beer was the commercials. It wasn't that good of a beer, but their commercials were hilarious. Beer commercials in the 70s and the 80s were always they were fun to watch. Today you don't even see any really much for beer commercials or anything, but back then in the day, had a lot of beer commercials. But I've told you about Rainier beer. You've got this, and you can go on YouTube and find these old commercials, and I recommend everybody do it because old beer commercials were fun. And this one here, they had Mount Rainier, and you'd see a picture of it, and there's this road going up to Mount Rainier, and then all of a sudden you hear this Rainier beer. That's the whole commercial. There's a motorcycle going up.
Yeah.
And it was so funny. You had Rainier beer bottles, that would be almost like a herd of deer running through the woods, and it was funny. Henry.
Well, counterpoint.
What's that?
Counterpoint, towards our generation, the Tullamore Dew commercials.
Those are good too, but that's whiskey. It's a whole different subject we'll broach.
Okay, Boomer. If you want to get into the technicalities.
Absolutely. Stay between the lines. The lines are your friends. Stay on topic. So, but what happened is just like anything else was in the late 70s, late 70s, a President Jimmy Carter, allowed people to brew beer at home. So all of a sudden, people were starting to get equipment, ingredients, whatever, and making their own beer at home. And all of a sudden, they're starting to experiment with all these different recipes. Because if you really take a look at beer, you know, there's a lot of different, you can have different ales, you can have all different types of things with ales go from a pale ale all the way to a stout. And there's all different types of, lager beers, Marzens, and, the lagers and all that. But, I mean, you've got all these different types of beers. And you take a look in Europe, in the United States, too, a lot of the beer was brewed basically because of the style or ingredients they can get a hold of. So, I mean, lagers were very famous for German, Czechoslovakia, whatever. But they were able to have cool areas to ferment your beer. So lagering takes a different yeast. So those beers, like in Germany, and the German immigrants that came over here that did Coors, Budweiser, Miller, are all German immigrants that brought over the recipes from Germany or Czechoslovakia. Then in Ireland and England and, Belgium, France area, most of those were ales. And the thing is that the Germans had the mountains, the ice and stuff to do long fermenting and cool, whereas those areas really didn't have any way of doing cold fermentation. So they had to do basically room temperature fermentation. And that gives you your ales. So your ales have a little bit more distinct taste. And they go all the way from an Irish stout, which is black, all the way to a blonde ale and stuff. So you've got everything in between. You can add different ingredients to it. But that's the one thing when people started home brewing, late 70s, early 80s, and they're able to get more and more kits and more recipes and try to think, voila, late 90s, early 2000, pretty soon you had microbreweries. So instead of having the huge breweries like Coors or Budweiser or Miller, you had these smaller mom and pop shops that were very similar to like what it was back before Prohibition. So you had more local beers. And you got to try different beers. And I think that's what we did when we get together, Mr. Ghantt Chart and Daddysquatch will go out to a local brewery, a microbrewery, to try out and sample their beers. We're not out there to, slug a whole bunch of beer back just to drink beer. I mean, we like to try the different beers they have.
Speak for yourself. I will drink. Okay, yeah, and that makes me sound like an alcoholic, but it's like, with a lot of beers, I'll sample a different, variations of beers. It's like tasty hop juice.
Oh, I like trying different beers. And the other thing too is that typically one, these beers are stronger than what you get in the store, but two, they're a lot more expensive too. So
yeah,
Daddysquatch is like, yeah, I'll have a couple beers and then go home and drink the other beer. But
I mean, my go-to for like big brands beer is Miller Lite because number one, it's cheap, and number two, the calories. Because yes, I am a calorie counter.
Yeah, Miller Lite. I mean, if you take a look at all the different ones, and this is where, I know there's a big controversy with Bud Light, but Bud Light, to me, had a controversy long before the Dylan Mulday was their big push on Miller or Coors using corn, and we don't use corn. We never use corn in our beer. They use rice, So it's like rice, corn, If you want to enact the German purity laws, those two ingredients you can't have in beer. But if you take a look at Busch Light, which is to me is a very strong kissing cousin of Bud Light, they advertise corn on their cans, and I'm like, well, that's just a marketing ploy that was stupid. And that's why I don't touch the Bud Light or the Budweiser product, because they're just, They pander, and I don't like that. I'm sorry. That's the way I am with beer. It's like Miller Lite is just, it's always a good. You can get it anywhere in the country, and it's usually, like you said, it's reasonably priced, and yeah, it's just a good chilling back, enjoying beer. But over the times, like I said, I started branching out, trying out different beers, and probably what really kind of pushed me past, going to drinking those beers, lagers and stuff, and into trying different beers was a brewery not a brewery, but a beer place down in Madison called Essen House. And they had all these German beers, and they import them. And you go to the Essen House, and they have a polka band playing, and you get these really unique German beers that were really, difference in color, taste, styles, and all that. And it was just good fun. And I was like, wow, there's different beers out there. Gotta try more. And I've been doing that since.
If I ever go to Madison, I'll make sure to go to that Eisenhouse.
Essen House.
Essen House.
Yes.
So,
they're right by the Capitol.
All right. So, as you have mentioned before, which we've been doing this a while, is that we like to go to a lot of microbreweries. And I figured that we would kind of like go through different microbreweries and talk about the pros and their cons. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So I think, so Daddysquatch and I, we like to go to Colorado a lot, and we will get a lot of Colorado microbreweries. So is there any particular microbreweries in Colorado that you want to start off with?
I love Fossil.
Ah, yes, Fossil. That's a good one. Fossil is a microbrewery in the Colorado Springs area that is, not only is it cheap, as far as like,
no,
as cheap as
microbreweries.
microbreweries.
Reasonable. I wouldn't use the word cheap.
Reasonable. Okay. They're reasonably priced for the beers. Like, I think it's like $4 per pint or anywhere from $4 to $6, but they're reasonably priced and the beers are actually pretty good. And I also like the fact that each of the beers is, prehistoric themed. You know what I mean? Like, you got Macedon, you got let's see, what other ones were there? There was a Megalodon. A lot of those fun fossil, themed beers. And I really like Fossil.
Well, I liked it. One, like you said, they're reasonably priced. I think their beer was a little bit more than the $4 or $6 thing. You go there and you experience the price of what it is. But the beer was always good. The people there were super friendly. The atmosphere is, dog friendly, kid friendly, whatever. So I mean, people would bring in their dogs, and they always had stuff ready for the dogs, like treats and water and stuff. And they had areas that the people with their dogs could get a little bit of privacy. They always had food trucks out front, so if you wanted to get some food, you just order it out there, and they'll bring it in. But yeah, always got good music, and always could find a place to sit. I just really enjoyed it. Good atmosphere. It's in a old historic part of Colorado Springs, so you can have a few beers there, but there's an excellent barbecue place that's like right near that you saw that one. It's like a gas station barbecue, and that place is always packed. I think we got a sandwich once, and I mean, it took forever just to get that because that is famous for their barbecue. But definitely, I like that.
Like what you were saying earlier, about the comfortable atmosphere, and the nice people. I do think that's another thing about the microbrewery experience that you gotta have. As the old saying goes, the bartender is everyone's friend at a bar.
Yeah, and there was a bartender there. I feel bad, I don't know her name, but I mean, she was there every time we would come and visit.
Name and address withheld.
She'd recognize us. We'd sit there and chit chat for a while and stuff. I think your mom and I, one time we came back to visit.
Name and address withheld.
We brought her a big Wisconsin sweatshirt, the colors and stuff. Just, here's something from Wisconsin. She loved it. But, I mean, just like you said, it's a good environment. Now, down the street, another microbrewery I like going to is Colorado Mountain Brewery.
Ah, yes, I love Colorado Mountain Brewery. I think the thing that I like most about Colorado Mountain Brewery is that it's in a commercial area that I can only describe as like, I want to call it building recycling. You know what I'm talking about, where people, instead of tearing a building down, they repurpose a building for something else. That building was initially a roundhouse for like trains, and it was part of like, that, and you have a few commercial buildings, but you also have, that, Colorado Mountain Brewery, and they very much utilize, that train atmosphere to it. Yes, I'm a sucker for trains. Deal with it.
Too, plus they're very big advocates for the Air Force Academy nearby.
Ah, yes. They have the 59ers is one of their beers, which is a nice blonde ale. That's a good one. I also like their monobrow, which is a nice wheat ale,
Hefeweizen,
which is pretty good.
Very good.
Yeah.
No, I they're really good. Plus, they got excellent food there. They got good appetizers. They got good salads, burgers, pizza, and all that stuff. So I mean, whereas you don't have to, you go there and it's excellent beer, excellent food. And, it's a good environment again. Probably a little bit more restaurant-y. So I mean, it's not going to be, hey, I'm gonna bring my dog in, or I don't think they frown on that, mainly because they prep food there and stuff.
And they also got like a outdoor area, so you could bring a dog out there.
You're right. They did have an area so you could and stuff. So yeah, it's very good. Well, I'll let you derive a couple that we usually like going to.
So this was a brewery that actually I visited yesterday, and I liked it so much that I do plan on bringing Daddysquatch and what should we call Mom?
Mama Penguin.
Mama Penguin. Okay, so this is a place that I want to take Daddysquatch and Mama Penguin to, which is called the Bridge Up Brewery, which is in Door County.
Sounds good.
So it's in like Sturgeon Bay, but like you said, it's also got that restaurant atmosphere. Not as much of a restaurant atmosphere, but the thing I liked about them was that they had a few beers, like, for example, I have a few of them written down. Like, they have 1851, which is a decent lager. They had Vessels for Freedom, which is like a kind of darkish brown IPA, which was pretty good and had like a little piney flavor to it. They also had another one, which was like a mango cherry, which I know Daddysquatch with purity laws he doesn't like, but the one thing that really impressed me about this microbrewery was their fries. And I know that's weird to say, like out of all the places, to get fries, but like, you gotta level with me when it comes to food. Like, it's very difficult to make what I consider perfect fries. You have to make sure it's not too greasy, that it's not too seasoned, and it's decently warm. And they managed to get all three of that triad perfect.
Crispy?
And I was eating those fries, and I was like, oh god, that's good.
Were they crispy?
They were crispy. They were crinkle cut. They were crispy, crinkle cut fries, and they were pretty good.
Yeah, it was. I'm just trying to think of some other microbreweries. Probably the one that Mama Penguin and Daddysquatch go to a lot is Hop Yard. And
Hop Yard.
I like their beers. I like their environment and stuff like that. Again, very much dog friendly. You can bring your dog, kids. Their beers, they have their own set of beers, but then they have others from other different breweries. They do seltzers too. So, and they serve wine. I mean, they don't ferment their own wine, but they've got wine there too. So some people, some people don't like beer; they prefer wine, so they cater to that stuff. Plus, they got great pizza there. I love their breadsticks. Their Italian dunkers, I think that is my favorite.
Ooh.
You get a little
that is a
sauce,
good one.
and it's basically cheese stick pizza, but really good. But again, people there friendly. They take good care of you And we've been there enough times that every time we come in there, we talk to the couple, the owners, and their kids are running the place too. So nice people. I mean, it's always enjoyable to go there. You always kind of feel a little special. So I like that place.
Aw. Any particular beers that you want to shout out that the place
Oh,
has?
running with your teeth first. That's probably my favorite IPA. There's a cherry blossom seltzer your mom tried this weekend, and she's addicted. I mean, she was like, "Can I get a 6-pack to go?" So she really liked it. It had a lot more flavor than you would get like a typical claw or something. You really got a good, cherry taste to it. And it was actually it was like drinking candy. That's why I kind of steered clear of it. I was like, oh, these would go down too quick.
So that's another thing with that I've noticed with like beer drinkers is that we have like our preferred styles of beer. Like Daddysquatch, for example, his preferred style is a good IPA. For me, it's blonde ales, and for Mama Penguin, it would be the seltzers. Like, get a six pack of White Claw, and she's happy as a clam.
Mama Penguin also likes IPAs. The thing is, we like Guinness too, which is going to be, that's a particular
Yes.
stout. Now, it's one thing when people talk about stouts, they'll either go to a milk stout or this stout or that, or a sweeter stout, and I don't like that. What Guinness is, it's a dry Irish stout. So actually, believe it or not, it's a light beer. It's
Mm.
lower in calories than a regular beer, and it's lower in alcohol and stuff. But you know what I love drinking about Guinness? If I go out for dinner, if you're going out with customers or you're going out with management or whatever, I always say that if you drink Guinness, what it has is shows that that you have a little bit of style and sophistication. Because they'll be looking at it, ooh, that's a dark beer. Ooh, that's a fancy beer. Whoa, you know your beers if you're ordering that. And Guinness has a good reputation for that. But people sit there and look at that. But what the key thing is, one, when you're drinking it, you're not getting a whole bunch of calories. But two, you're light on the alcohol. And sometimes in front of a customer or management or anybody around, you want to take something that you don't get too silly or goofy, but you're still drinking with them. So it's kind of what I could a stealth drink. So I
Ah,
enjoy
yes.
it, but I'm just saying is that is my go-to. When they see you drinking it, it's like, ooh, you can order a Bud Light or a Miller Light or whatever, and nobody's impressed. You get a Guinness. Oh, wow, you know something about beer. It shows you're kind of like, you know, you know some things about it. So, and I still love Guinness.
Yeah, like,
Probably one place I really enjoyed going, and this is before they really kind of went totally commercial, was Langitas beer. So Langitas is a microbrewery out in Petaluma, California. And
hmm
what had happened was I was stationed out, so like military, and I'm not military. Wouldn't even, those people in the military are the best. Don't even come close to saying what I go through, close to what they got to go through. But the company I worked for had me working out with the customer out there, and I was out there for 3 months. And when I'd go to the local beer store or whatever, just find some beer for the evening, I saw Lagunitas, and I was like, oh, and they had some funny, they had, their IPA, but then they had a beer called Hop Stupid. I
Mm.
tried that. It was really intense hop beer, and I really, I grow hops, and I'm like, oh, this is, it's strong, but it was good, stuff like that. And I said, Petaluma, I wonder where that is. Well, it happened to be like an hour drive north of where I was staying, so I'm like, I'd go visit the microbrewery. Well, I went to the microbrewery, and they had a beautiful tap room area. And I spent a Sunday afternoon sitting there drinking beer, listening to music. Beautiful environment, beautiful place to go and stuff. In fact, I had to go to there was a Burger King across the street, grabbed a couple bags food after drinking there, went in the car, ate the food, and then took a nap because I'd had a little to drink, and I said, I don't want to be drunk driving, so I had to sit in the parking lot for about 3 hours till everything cleared out of the system. I was able to go home, but
True.
really enjoyed that.
So I'll give some life advice that my sister gave, who she's a nurse, you can totally trust her, you know. And this is her advice for dealing with a hangover, and that is to drink some water, have some greasy food, take an aspirin before going to sleep, and then it will either, take away the hangover afterwards, or it should minimize it pretty significantly. She recommends pizza because it helps sop up a lot of the beer.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on how far you've gone over the edge. Because you can eat that, lay down, next thing you know, your stomach is in total turmoil and you're puking your guts out. So I find it
Yeah.
best if you don't want a hangover, don't drink a lot. But I think the one thing
Name and address withheld.
we had right on the head is like when you're drinking, your body is using your fluids to flush you out. So, drink lots of water. I think that's one of the things I saw in California. And I really enjoy that too, is that when they're drinking beer, they got a glass of water too. So they're kind of encouraging them to, kind of dilute what's going. Enjoy the taste when you're done with that, but take a couple sips of water too, and that helps you keep hydrated. But it also kind of minimizes the impact of the alcohol on you.
It kind of reminds me of so think it was I think it was like Miller Lite that so you remember those storm Area 51 memes where you had people out in the desert saying we're going to storm Area 51, and I remember like Miller Lite responded that we do not support this action, so we will not be sending any beer to that area. And then I remember, I forget which beer company it was, and it responded back. So I was like, oh, what a shame. I guess the people won't be hydrated then. Basically calling their water just watered down.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I've had enough Miller Lights to tell you it's like they're just like every other beer. They've got the same little bit of a kick to it. So, uh,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, it's not, it's water, and I'm like, well, unless you're drinking like a double IPA or a barley wine or something that has higher alcohol content, they're all roughly between about 4.5 to 6% alcohol, which is not much difference. So, yeah.
What is, in your opinion, the worst brand of beer? Like, the one where you're like, take a step down. You're not that great.
Ooh, well, I'll tell you what. Usually as you get down, the cheaper the beer, the more risk you take in drinking or buying the beer. Um, so being younger when I was going to college, there was a liquor store by us. My roommates and I would always buy Old Milwaukee beer. Now, Old Milwaukee beer was in returnable bottles, but to get a 24 case of beer at that time was like $3 or $4, and that was 24 12-ounce beers. Our apartment, half the furniture was made with these boxes full of bottles of beer. The entertainment center. If we needed end tables, whatever, let's just grab the boxes, put a piece of wood on top of it and stuff. I mean, it was interesting. There was actually a bar near the campus that had Old Milwaukee on tap, and we were just like, yay! Because every other pitcher of beer was like $3 or $4 or $5, but the Old Milwaukee thing was like $2 or $3. You're like, yay, we get cheap beer. So, there is one beer your mother and I had. So Mama Penguin and Daddysquatch were on the west coast of the United States. We're in some town in Oregon. And we had this beer. It was called Fort George something. I forget what the beer was. But it was like somebody had taken orange juice and poured it. I mean, not a hint of orange. This was just overpowering orange juice into like a Hefeweizen. And we took
Okay.
a sip of that. I think we got the big cans and stuff like that. And the bartender said, "Oh, these are great. Everybody loves them around here. You got to try these beers." So Mom and I was like, "Oh, okay." We took a sip of it. And we're just like, "Oh my God. Oh, that was not a good beer." I couldn't, I mean, usually I'll finish up a beer because I spent the money on it. I'm going to finish that beer. I couldn't finish that beer. It's the only beer that I paid for it. Just could. Well, I'm sure there's other beer, but I'm just saying it's that one there. It's like, oh, horrible, horrible beer. And maybe you ask your mom, she'll tell you that too. We just thought that was the worst beer ever.
I mean, you've talked earlier about purity laws, and I think maybe for the audience, to talk about like German purity laws, like what you had sounds like it violated it. And for the audience, I'm just wondering if you want to inform them a little bit, just in case they don't know.
German purity laws of beer making in 1516, they basically stated that only 4 ingredients will be used in beer, and that's water, yeast, hops, and barley. That's it. And everybody goes, well, geez, you're not going to have a variety of beer. It's got, oh my. What I've learned over beer making is there's so many different strains of barley. There's so many different ways you can roast it. That you can get different barley grain, different roasts, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you can really alter, the spectrum just on the barley. I said hops. There's like 50 different versions of, maybe even 100 of hops. You can buy all the different types of hops that some will give you an earthy taste, some will give you a piney taste, some will give you a citrusy taste. It just depends on the hops you use. The water is critical, and you're like, well, what's the difference in water? One of the things I've noticed is that the microbreweries out in Colorado definitely have a leg up over any other microbreweries they've had in the United States. And that is because of the water they get. As you're coming out of the Rockies, that's, granite rock. It's not volcanic rock. It's granite rock. It's coming down off the hillsides. They get a good mineral content in that water. So you really get a spectacular tasting beer just from that water with the minerals in it. And then the yeast. There's so many different types of yeast you can use. You can ale yeast, you got lager yeast, and then you got whole different spectrums within those yeast. So, you take a look at the German purity laws, what they were basically stating is that, if you're going to make beer, limit it to these ingredients. Just don't throw in like potatoes or this and that in those days. What they wanted to make it was that here are the 4 ingredients. You can play around with the 4 ingredients, but keep it to the 4 ingredients. And
now,
that's
counter argument.
What's that?
Counter argument. Leinenkugel's doesn't follow those rules because they have things like berry wise and honey wise and summer shandy. And I'm just gonna say it, Daddysquatch. Leinenkugel's isn't that bad. It's actually a pretty decent brand of beer.
Yeah, Leinenkugel's German, right? Coors.
Yeah.
Coors uses rice. That's not German. And it's funny because I'll take one of these tours, and I always have the smart ass in the back. They said, "Oh well, they do it the strictest German, laws." I said, "BS. German purity laws, 1516, 4 ingredients. Rice is not on the list." And you always get the look. Tour guides like, "Oh, F you." Yes, here's what the Germans were doing at that time was just keep the beer consistent. They're like consistency and stuff. But just like anything else, they say you have the German purity laws, yet Hefeweizen is a German beer. And guess what they use for the grains of that? Wheat. They don't use barley. They use barley, but they use a lot of wheat in there too. And they put a little bit of lemon in there. And you're like, wait, you guys just said. But they do it for, it's a summer beer. It's a refreshing beer. Now, again, I don't like citrus being, flavored beers. I don't. Wheat beers tend to give me, I don't know, it's a little bit of a headache from the wheat taste. So, I know Leinenkugels, you like their Hefeweizen, you like their berry whatever and stuff like that. And I could do that. I mean, I understand that. I don't like them. Just, you know, if you want that, go get a seltzer.
True. And I know that there's also another brand of beer that you're not a huge fan of. Well, I mean, you think it's okay, but you hate the glowing halo that, people seem to put around it. And that would have to be New Glarus.
Spotted cow I don't like. I know everybody tells me that
Yes.
spotted cow is like manna from heaven. I don't like it. It gets me gut rot. It's a cream ale, so I don't know, just something maybe with the yeast or whatever, how they brew it. But I get it, and I get, my stomach. I always get an upset stomach, so I don't. I'm sorry, New Glarus. Sorry, there's other beers too that get gut rot too, and I put them on my list and say nope.
I mean, I've had Spotted Cow. It's okay. It's not a beer that I'm going to go out of my way to drink. I'll still stick with my Leinenkugels and Miller Lite as my go-tos.
Well, I mean, to each their own. I mean, a lot of people like it. More power to them. I'm not saying it's a bad beer. I'm just saying it doesn't agree with me and stuff like that. So, probably my favorite is Pliny the Elder. Now, I'd love
Yes, Pliny the Elder.
Pliny the Elder. Now, this is out in Russian River Brewery out in California, but that is my hands down favorite beer. And I know when we go out to Colorado, we can usually buy it a bottle at a time. So I mean, it's not an easy beer to get a hold of, but I mean, as far as it's a good strong IPA, and just it's the best tasting. It's clear, it's crisp. It's just they've got the hop profile right in there, balance of the malt in there. It's great beer.
Well, I can see why that they would have a limit on it, given how many people like to buy the stuff.
Well, they don't brew that much. I mean, they may just say that's all we're brewing. There's a lot of places that say that we're only doing this now. That same brewery has a beer called Pliny the Younger, and they don't. I mean, I've heard that once the brewery makes that small batch, I mean, people around the brewery buying it up right at the brewery. I mean, they don't even just ship it. They say, "Hey, we did Pliny the Younger." Next day, it's all gone.
Is this your way of saying that if I can get my hands on some Pliny the Younger, you would sip some?
I don't know. Ghantt Chart, I think if you sat there and if you were to get Pliny the Younger, you'd be right up there with Daddysquatch's #1 son.
I mean, I'm already your #1 son. How many other sons do you have?
Well, you would be #1 son. I don't know. 1 squared son. I don't.
Yes.
But your sister, knows somebody out there that works in that brewery, so he was gonna get her a can or two, and she was like, "Well, Dad, I don't know. I'll have it here." And I'm like, "Well, road trip." Drive all the way out there just to take a sip from a can of beer, but yeah. But yes, I mean, definitely the microbreweries. What Mama Penguin and we get or have been given to these passport books, and usually, depending on your local area, like in the state we're in, with this passport book, what it has is that all these microbreweries will give you. They want to entice you to at least come in there. So it's like buy a beer, get a beer free. So you're getting a free beer basically to go in there. But it's fun to sit there and find out different areas. We ran into one microbrewery in northern Wisconsin, Station 1. Great place. It's an old fire station. Again, it's repurposing a building, just like what you're talking about. But it was an old fire station. They put it into a microbrewery. It's in town. They serve food in there. Again, they do the pet thing with the kids and all that. Plus, they've got like a area you can rent out if you want to have a private event and stuff. But it's kind of neat to be in there. You can see the old fire station decor and stuff like that. But their beer is really good, and it's very reasonable. So again, it's fun that if you can get one of these books, what it does is that you're driving somewhere and say, hey, let's stop here, or hey, we can stop there, stop for one or two beers, but then you find out, who's making good beer, who's not making good beer. I think way up in northern Wisconsin, as you're starting to get across there, you took us there for a meal. Was at the Rail House.
Yes.
Why don't you tell me about what you think about the Rail House?
I think the Rail House is pretty good. I think probably the food item that I like the most out of them would have to be their chicken pot pie. Like, they make a really good chicken pot pie where they cook it in a cast iron. But as far as, like, the beers that they have, the things that I like most from them, it has to be their Queen Anne's Revenge, which they recently released, which is a Scottish red ale. And it's really good.
And see, that's the whole thing about there. You can get Miller Lite, Bud Light, Coors Light, all that. But I like the whole thing of going out and trying different beers, but also experiencing different atmospheres. And again, to the microbreweries, whether it's in Colorado, whether it's on the West Coast, the East Coast. Well, now that you bring it up, I went to a microbrewery, and I wish I could remember the name of it, but it's in Wilmington, North Carolina. Now, it's interesting because when you get out to the East Coast, and then you start seeing, they have the deep history of the United States. The place I was, at this one microbrewery I was down there, it was something that was in Wilmington since the Revolutionary War. So, this building here was old. It had kind of like nooks and crannies and stuff. But, the beer was really good. I'm trying to remember the name of the place. It was a few years back, about 10 years ago. But what I found was really interesting, and I think, Ghantt Chart, you would love to do this, is once a month they do a pub crawl to all the microbreweries in Wilmington. But it's the haunted pub crawl. So they go to the haunted buildings. You get to drink with the spirits.
So you get to have spirits with the spirits.
With the spirits.
Yes.
But I think that would intrigue you. But see,
yeah.
But again, there you go. You're doing something different, and you're still enjoying, beer. And I think that's what microbreweries kind of getting back to what it used to be in the United States was. You'd have your town's local beer. It was a gathering place. It was a fun place to try this and that. Each town you go to, they had their own different gathering places.
And it kind of reminds me of how it's also about the tavern culture. I remember when I was taking U.S. history in college, my college professor told me about how, taverns were also places to meet up and sometimes discuss politics. So it was another benefit to it.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird to think that the revolution probably started, over a few drinks.
That's usually how they start. Sell those guys. That's too bad. Let's go and get them.
Yeah. So, as far as, beers, I talked about the Queen Anne's Revenge, and I guess it also brings up another question. Not necessarily is the beer good. What is the best name for a beer? You have to think of it. What is a beer where you're just damn, I don't care if the beer is good or bad. I'll drink it just because the name sounds really cool.
Well, that sounds cool there, the Queen Anne's Revenge. You're starting to think of pirates. Ooh, that sounds good, Hop Stupid. To me, I was like, well, that name's out there right there. I looked at the box, and it says Hop Stupid, so I bought a 6-pack because I thought, well, okay, I'm going to try it,
I think one that I tried, which I know Daddysquatch is also a fan of, because you can get it at Aldi's, but one that I tried, which I was actually pleasantly surprised how good was, but tried it because of the name, was Hoppin' Nomad.
Oh, very good. Well, what about your Edmund Fitzgerald beer?
Ah, yes, that's another one that I've also tried. Another beer that I also like, and that's actually a pretty good one. It's made by the Great Lakes Brewing Company. They make some good beer.
Yeah, and I'm just, again, uh, I'm a big advocate to go out and explore. And I said, get the one. If you see those passport books, they're about $30 usually. You'll see it at a microbrewery. You pick one up. You want to do it in like January, February, because it's good for the year. But you go through there and you're driving through a town. And you're like, let's stop here. Let's stop there. And I think your mom and I stopped at 25 breweries last year just by this book. We're in the area. We'd stop through and we'd have a beer and try it out. But like I said, some of the breweries, it's like, yeah, okay, we got a beer. Let's go. And would I stop there again? I mean, it's a good atmosphere, but I'm not going to go out of my way. But there are some microbreweries we've gone to that, yes, I will go out of my way to have a few beers there.
And it's also the engineer in me, but if I can, I also like to get, when going to a brewery, sometimes get an opportunity to look at the factory and manufacturing beer process. You know what I mean? Like seeing the brewing process, the malting process, those little, devices that turn the different beers, that turns the different grains, as well as packaging the beers, I guess that's sort of the engineer in me, seeing all that machinery at work.
Well, how about this? Mr. Ghantt Chart, I was going to make a batch of beer, so when I get back from out west, you come down, we'll make a batch of beer. And even though it's stovetop, it's just bigger equipment, but it's the same process.
Do you want me to do like a video recording of the event, and then we could just like do some commentary over it and then post it as an episode for that?
Why don't we do that?
Yeah, so that'll be an episode idea for the future. So yeah.
The hops that we're going to be using in the beer are a very special hop. You can't buy these hops. Your Mama Penguin and I have been nurturing these hops for the past 6 years, and we're finally getting them to where they're growing, and we got some pretty wild hops.
Oh, your babies are ready?
Oh, yes. Well, the babies are growing right now, but I mean, this is from last year's crop, so.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Mama Penguin and Daddysquatch, also grow hops at my grandparents' farm, which I think like you guys were working on those today.
Oh yeah, we're there cleaning them up and weeding them out.
What types do you have? You have I think you have your chippies. You have your
Okay, and now Mama Penguin gives them nicknames. Here's what I've got. I've got Cascades, I've got Chinooks, I got Willamettes, I got Mount Hoods, and I have Ingredient X hops.
Ooh, Chemical X.
Chemical X, there you go.
So yeah, thank you for joining us, for this episode, and I'm sure, we'll have some, different beers, maybe we'll get a chance to, show you guys an episode of us brewing some beer. So yeah, I'm glad that you guys were here to enjoy the episode. Sorry the episode was a little shorter than usual, but I think we got to talk about some different beers, unless Daddysquatch wants to add some more piece of, beer wisdom.
Go out and enjoy beer. Go to a microbrewery, support local beer makers. Doesn't mean to go get drunk there, but I'll tell you what, it's worth having a couple beers and enjoying the atmosphere and getting to know your neighbors.
Yep. And also, because I was listening to polka music with my sister and brother-in-law, I will quote a song that we were listening to. In heaven, there is no beer, so we drink it here. And when we are no longer here, our families will drink our beer. So thank you again for listening to our episode on beer with Daddysquatch and Ghantt Chart, for OK Boomer, OK Zoomer. Hopefully we'll have some more episodes in the future. We'll think of some different episodes ideas. If you guys have any suggestions of things you want to see, let us know. Also, let us know what your favorite beers are, you know? We'd love to see what the United States has as far as beer. So thank you again for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.